What's going on, people? Good morning. Hope your Wednesday's off to a good start. And the Seahawks, in case you didn't know, made the playoffs. Yeah, they did make the playoffs, but we have some lingering little threads to sort through from the regular season as we move towards this intriguing, exciting, interesting playoff game. So while I want to be clear here, as this week goes on, we're going to turn our focus more and more towards the postseason. We are going to also be wrapping up some regular season stuff as this week goes on. And this video, I want to talk about individual awards because obviously I'm here as a Seahawks fan, but when players and coaches and general managers do things that help the team win, then I like it when they get honored because they deserve it. They deserve to be credited with what they've managed to do for that year. So I do pay a little bit of attention to the yearly awards. They call them the annual NFL honors. And I've made several videos this year talking about, will this Seahawk win X award? I did it for Ken Walker with Offensive Rookie of the Year, Tariq Woolen, Defensive Rookie of the Year. I did it with Coach of the Year. I did it with, I think, Comeback Player of the Year. So I've definitely talked about this previously, but I'm going to go ahead and make this video to kind of run down where we stand on all those fronts. So here we have a list of all the NFL honors. Now I'm going to skip over some of these because who the heck knows, right? Like, I don't know what the Bud Light Celebration of the Year is. I don't know who's going to win that, and I don't care. You know, the Bart Starr Award, the Art Rooney Award, Salute to Service Award. I'm not really talking about that stuff. I'm talking about, like, honors for achievement and accomplishment. There are going to be a couple that I talk about that aren't even listed here, by the way, but they are NFL awards. And obviously I care about the All-Pro team. We'll find out about that probably in a few weeks. I'll probably talk a little bit more about that before we get there. But most of these awards do not really apply to the Seahawks. MVP, no. At one point, maybe Geno was on the list, but he's not on the list anymore. Assistant Coach of the Year, no, definitely not. Offensive Player of the Year, no. Defensive Player of the Year, no. I don't think we've got any of that. I not FedEx Air Player of the Year, FedEx Ground Player of the Year, nothing like that. I'm not seeing any of those awards. So briefly, let's talk about some of the intriguing ones. Coach of the Year. Pete Carroll should be on the list. I'm sure he is. This team was predicted to win, I believe, 5.5 games before the year started. They won 9. So that improvement deserves credit, especially given that there were a lot of people who thought we were going to win like 4 or 3 or 2 games. But to me, it's pretty clear that either Sirianni or DeBoll or Daboll or Dabble or whatever in New York is going to win it. Pete will probably finish third behind those two guys. And I'm good with that. Like, Sirianni probably would have gone 16-1 if he didn't lose interest and start not playing his starters at the end of the year, like playing Gardner Minshew those 2 games. And Dabble took over a team that might even have less talent than we do, and he actually got them to a better record, a higher seed. So one of those 2 guys should finish above Pete, probably both. I got no problem with that. Pete did a great job this year, but one of those two guys should win Coach of the Year. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I think we all kind of know it's not going to happen. What I can say, though, is I'm at peace with it, and not really because of Sauce Gardner, because I think everyone expects that Sauce Gardner will win Defensive Rookie of the Year because of the hype. Not that he's a bad player. He is a really good player for sure. But to me, he's a great player because the refs let him get away with everything already for some weird reason. I don't know why. I don't understand it. But he gets all the credibility of a Deion Sanders combined with a Jalen Ramsey already. So, straight up, I think that Tariq Woolen should win Defensive Rookie of the Year over Sauce. However, at the end of the day, a big, massive, hulking part of Tariq Woolen's argument was the interceptions. And the interceptions kind of went away as the year went on. I'm sorry, but they did. There was a point in time where it looked like he could end up with 10, 11, 12 interceptions. He ended up with 6 because he stopped picking the ball off at the end of the year. So if we're going to say the reason why Tariq should get Defensive Rookie of the Year is because of the interceptions, we also have to acknowledge when the interceptions dry up a little bit. So even though I don't really respect Sauce Gardner that much because of all the stuff he gets away with, there's another defensive rookie, Hutchinson, who I do think actually deserves Defensive Rookie of the Year more than Tariq. So while Hutchinson may not win because of all the Sauce hype, I don't think Woolen deserves it either way. Hutchinson was a dominant player this year. He had 9.5 sacks, 3 interceptions. I mean, and we saw what he did. He was one of the best players on the field for the Lions when they beat the Packers, which pushed us into the playoffs. So whatever there. So those are the 2 awards that we will probably be on the list for. I'm sure Woolen will finish top 3, but I don't think he's going to really have a chance to win. And I also don't think Pete's going to win Coach of the Year. So let's talk about some of the awards that I do think a Seahawk will win or should win. First, we're going to start with Ken Walker III. The guy finishes the season with 1,200 yards from scrimmage, 9 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards rushing. He had most of his best games at the end of the year, by the way. He did not hit the rookie wall. He had his best games in Week 18, Week 17, I would even argue Week 16. So he did not slow down as the year went on. He ended the season with, I believe, 3 straight 100-yard games. And to me, that screams Rookie of the Year, especially when his team gets into the playoffs. Especially when the starting running back goes out for the year in Week 5, and you have to put all this stuff on his shoulders because he's the only really high-end running back you have, and he produces, he delivers. He missed a couple games, he had some bad games, but clearly to me, Ken Walker should be Offensive Rookie of the Year. His main competition, and only real competition, as near as I can tell, is Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson had a really good year too, and he did it with some bad quarterback play. He put up, I believe, 1,100 yards from scrimmage, 4 touchdowns, caught 83 passes, played and started in, no, not started, but played in every game for the Jets. He was really good too. I really like Garrett Wilson. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, okay, his catch rate was low, not his fault, but he only caught like 56.5% of the passes thrown his way. And at the end of the day, his team is not in the playoffs. Ken Walker turned it on at the end of the season to make sure his team got in. And while I don't want to blame Garrett Wilson for this, because at the end of the day, he didn't have good quarterback play. He didn't exactly have his best games at the end of the season, right? Like against Seattle, he basically did nothing. Jacksonville, he did basically nothing. He put together a couple good games here, like against the Dolphins, he was pretty good. He was decent against the Lions. But during the part of the season when the Jets were frantically flailing around trying to save the year, he really didn't do that much, at least in a few of these games. He was actually fairly quiet. And also, I think it is important to note that the Jets offense, where Garrett Wilson plays, they have one of the worst offenses in the league. It's like 29th in points scored. Ken Walker is a crucial part of an offense that ranks 9th in points scored. So you put it all together, I do believe Ken Walker III should be Offensive Rookie of the Year, and probably Rookie of the Year, period. Because I know Pepsi does like just a general Rookie of the Year. They usually give it to the offensive player, and I think Ken Walker probably deserves it. He's in the playoffs, he's got the production, do it. The next award I think that a Seahawks should win is Comeback Player of the Year. And right now, Geno Smith is basically in a tie in terms of the Vegas odds for Comeback Player of the Year. And it's easy to see why. This is a guy who had never had a good year in the NFL. He had never been a good player. He had one year where he was bad. The team he was on ended up being okay. He had some positive traits. He passed for 3,000 yards his rookie year. It was like, okay. Got a little something here, but the next year, it didn't get better by enough. The team was terrible, and that was it for him. Got batted around the league to the Giants, the Chargers. He was out of the league for a year, didn't do anything in 2019. And then opportunity knocked in Seattle when he signed on as a backup, and then Russell Wilson got traded. And he's responded with a Pro Bowl caliber year. Almost 400 completions, top tier completion percentage, 70%. Literally tops in the entire NFL. 4,300 yards almost, 30 touchdowns, 11 picks, QB rating about 101. The guy had a really special season. And again, our offense is really good. It's ninth in the league. So the quarterback who is behind that has to get a lot of credit for it. So by every metric imaginable, win-loss record, numbers, touchdowns, points scored, Geno Smith was a good, maybe even a really good quarterback this year. Yeah, he slowed down at the end, but he still managed to deliver enough to get this team into the playoffs. And he's given the Seahawks some of their best quarterback play ever. This is one of the best years any quarterback has ever had for the Seahawks. His main competition is Christian McCaffrey. And I look at McCaffrey and I go, the last 2 years, the previous 2 years in Carolina, he played a grand total of 10 games. And across those 10 games, he had about, 1,100 yards from scrimmage. He was still pretty good in those games. He just didn't play in very many of them. This year, he's played in every game. And he's got almost 1,900 yards from scrimmage, 13 touchdowns. His team is also in the playoffs, by the way. His team has an elite offense. So this one's going to be tight. And this one could go either way. I wouldn't be offended if Christian McCaffrey won Comeback Player of the Year. He has come back from a lot. He made the All-Pro team 3 years ago. And then the last 2 years, he's been a complete non-factor. Completely irrelevant in the eyes of the NFL. And now he's bounced back to be this player who has nearly 1,900 yards, averaging 5.7 yards per touch. And he kind of looks like his old self. So this one's going to be tight. This one's going to be interesting. Saquon is like a distant third, but I'm not really going to talk about him. So those are 2 awards that I feel fairly good about giving to a Seahawk. Offensive Rookie and Comeback. This last one I'm going to talk about is the one I feel extremely strongly about. And if they don't give it to this particular individual, I'll be really surprised. And, not annoyed because it doesn't affect me, but I will look at that and go, somebody messed up. If this guy does not win this award, somebody messed up. Okay? I'm talking about John Schneider. John Schneider should be hands down, by far, not even close, the executive of the year. What GM has done better? The only name that I've heard that makes any degree of sense to me would be Howie Roseman in Philly. And Howie Roseman in Philly has done a great job. But John Schneider, in one off season, pulled off the greatest trade, maybe in NFL history, the greatest trade of my lifetime minimum. He traded a quarterback who immediately became one of the worst quarterbacks in the league for 2 firsts, both in the top 10, one in the top 5, 2 seconds, same, 3 players of varying quality, 2 of which were meaningful contributors in 2022, and you got out of having to pay him that money, you got out of having to give him that contract, and that trade alone should put Schneider on the list. But look at the rest of it. Look at the draft we had. I don't need to list everything here. You guys know how good it was. 2 franchise-quality tackles, franchise-quality running back, franchise-quality elite cornerback, quality cornerback prospect, quality developmental linebacker, edge rusher, even a semi-interesting prospect at wide receiver. It is one of the best draft classes in Seahawks history. And we've only seen them as rookies, by the way. Excuse me. So it's this draft on top of the trade. He pulled off an amazing trade. He pulled off an amazing draft. And let's not forget what he did in free agency. It was a pretty strong free agency as well. And this to me is just like the cherry on top. This is just the sprinkles. Obviously, the trade was the main thing. The draft was the other main thing. Those 2 things alone, I think, should give Schneider Executive of the Year. However, when you look at what he was able to do, like bringing back Geno Smith, and I'm not saying it was hard to bring back Geno Smith, but you got a guy that you gave $7 million and you got basically $30 million worth of play from. It's certainly not bad, right? It's really good. So the Geno Smith signing, you had the Will Dissly contract that a lot of people didn't like. That worked out. Marquise Goodwin, nice signing. So the little things that this team did in the offseason to make themselves a little bit better, most of them panned out. You go to the defense, you look at guys like Quentin Jefferson has actually managed to earn his money. You've got Al Woods, you re-signed him actually, and he's been more or less worth the money you gave him. You've got Nwosu, who I think has exceeded expectations. The Quandre Diggs contract, look, I'm not going to say he's exceeding his contract, but he's still a good player. Quandre Diggs re-signing reasonable. Bringing back Ryan Neal, and he's become one of the better safeties in the league suddenly. Yeah, I think Ryan Neal, you got to give Schneider a lot of credit for that too. Even the little things, like bringing in Jonathan Abram at the end of the year, I think has had a big positive impact on this team when they needed it. Tease Tabor was okay. There are a couple whiffs, like Brian Monet. Shouldn't have given him that contract. That was stupid. Austin Blythe, although Austin Blythe is cheap, you are kind of getting what you're paying there, honestly. And Rashad Penny didn't work out, but that's not Schneider's fault. The guy just got hurt. And it's not like you're giving him a ton of money anyway, so it's not even that big of a deal. So it was a good free agency period, too. Maybe you could say, hey, we should have kept DJ Reed. I don't really agree with that. DJ Reed's great and all, but I can't be spending big money on a corner. But overall, you take a look. Dwayne Brown went to the Jets and immediately became a much worse player. Brandon Shell left, and I don't even know if he's on a team right now. So some of the guys you let go, you're like, good riddance, right? Or, well, okay, I don't want to put it that harshly, but you guys know what I mean. This is a business at the end of the day. So the free agency stuff is just kind of whatever, but overall it was good. The Diggs contract, it's not amazing, but it's worked out. The Nwosu contract has been pretty amazing. You've gotten a double-digit sack year from a guy you paid mid-tier money. You put together a not great, but workable defensive line without paying anybody big money. There were a couple of missteps, but overall, I think John Schneider should definitely be Executive of the Year for 2022. So those are the awards I'm saying the Seahawks should win individually. Ken Walker, Offensive Rookie of the Year, maybe Rookie of the Year overall, but we'll just say offensive. Geno Smith should be Comeback Player of the Year. And John Schneider should be Executive of the Year. Let me know what you guys think. Agree, disagree, any points you want to make. That's what I got right now. And Pete and Tariq should finish top 3 in their races, I believe, as well, for whatever that's worth. And yeah, that's about it. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks, and more videos coming.